Hey guys, it's me, Ricky Riggs, or Rick Riggs, or WikiWigs. Sure, you can do that. You can go visit me at wikiwigs.com. Anyway, let's get started here. So, I got a couple orders of business here. First being, this is the first of a few, at least, of videos regarding object-oriented programming. And this particular one is not really about those object-oriented concepts, but it is the jumping off point, and I want to make sure I covered this one very, uh, you know, early on. I just wanted to make sure that maybe someone who wasn't familiar with the tech that we're using gets familiar. So if you know HTML and CSS and you know the basics of those things, you might want to skip this video and just catch us on the next one, right? So feel free to watch it. It's not a bad thing to watch. It's just I would sure hate to sit through a video thinking that I was going to see some real good progress on something and just kind of be stuck and not really feel like I've gotten anywhere when someone could have told me early on. So fair warning. So what we're going to be covering is HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript. Yeah, started to spell that right. Okay, JavaScript. And really how these work with each other, how the browser uses it somewhat, just at its basic levels. And we're just going to go through an exercise that covers these at their very basics, but also just show you kind of how the browser uses OOP from what we can see, and just introduce you to at least I'm using Chrome. I'm not going to try to get to cross-browser compatibility and all that craziness. I don't. That's not the intent of even what I'm doing. I know that those things exist. I know that they're crazy, and I know that between Firefox and Opera and Internet Explorer and Chrome and Safari and I don't know some other handfuls of older versions of Netscape or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, what I do know is that these things they've continued to change over time, but they haven't really lost their core functionality. So many people already know this HTML and CSS and even JavaScript stuff. Um, but if you're brand new to it, I want to make sure you know what it is, how to go find out more, because I'm not going to keep focusing in on the breadth of these things, but I will get focused in on uh, more uh, detail on in different aspects. But OOP is what I use a lot of, and I want to make sure that one, you know how to approach it, uh, you know how to get there, you know how to find the right kind of resources on how to learn this stuff, and two, I'm not claiming to be a master at these things. I've known a lot of this stuff for a long time personally, but I don't claim to have known it very well. Um, but what I do know about it, I use in a very powerful way. So I'm going to cover it because I want you to be able to follow along with me and at least have access to the same power of the language that I use all the time. So anyway, I'm going to stop ranting and we're going to hop into some basics of HTML. So what is HTML? HTML is a container type language, and I'll just put the abbreviation in here. Um, it stands for hyper, and I probably won't even spell this stuff right. So hypertext markup language. Why they called it all that, I don't know, but that's what it is. HTML, hypertext markup language. To me, it's a display language. That's what I consider it. It is what the browser reads, and based on what's inside of the HTML, that's what it displays. And based on what CSS describes to operate on those HTML elements, it will modify, and then JavaScript can do all sorts of craziness with the mix of all of that and also do its own stuff. I mean, in many ways, do its own stuff. So let's start to describe this maybe a little better. Um, let's see. I almost want a drawing tool up here, so I'm just going to start up paintbrush. Ta-da! Paintbrush. All right. This is going to be horrible drawing with the mouse, but this is kind of the way I see HTML. So I see HTML as being a big container that anything that belongs inside of it fits inside of it. So in our case, I'm just going to, whoop, no, go back. Let's click off of that. All right, change color. So from how I usually use HTML, I have a head section of this, and maybe there's some things that go inside of the head there, and then we have a body section, and it fits inside of there, and we declare what's in that body, and then maybe inside of that we have, let's just pick a different color here. We have this part and that bigger part and this part and maybe a section of links, and we have an about me page and or whatever section or area. We have a sitemap link, and we have all these different parts and components that we all see on web pages every day. And we might just have a little like thing here that is at least visible to us that might be here. So that to me is what HTML is. It's basically a container inside of a container inside of a container, and then when you write text inside of these containers or whatever, maybe this is text inside of a paragraph element or a div element or a span element or a and if you're a beginner, you're like, what the heck is a div and a span and a blah blah. Okay, let's take care of that right now. W3schools.com. If you don't know what I'm talking about, start with the tutorials. HTML, CSS. Not right now. You're watching a video. But if you want to know more about what I'm talking about, like what these different things are and why you should know them, I recommend go through a tutorial. Go learn those things. So anyway, w3schools.com. I can't recommend that enough for some of these basic stuff because they're really good. They got tutorials. Once you've kind of learned what you're doing, you can always go back and get like at these references or, hey, what's that color called again? And you can go get the color names and so you can go color names, and they'll show you a whole list of names along with their hex values and like all sorts of stuff. I mean, these guys are pretty cool. They got a lot of stuff going on for them. Anyway, so this to me is like the abstract picture of what HTML is. It looks like some sort of living amoeba organism that's trying to, I don't know, reproduce up here or something. I don't know, something weird. Anyway, that's that's the structure somewhat of HTML. Things inside of things inside of things. So done with that explanation. No, I don't want to save it. So you'll see this structure right now. So like I said, there's a head element to the document. And also notice what I'm doing here. So every time I create an opening tag, I have this closing tag, and it always follows this format. The format is less than symbol, the name of the tag, greater than symbol. That's the opening tag, the whole thing. Then the closing tag is very, very similar, except for before the description of the tag, there's this / character. So I did it here. I closed off the HTML tag, and I closed off the head tag. Okay, and then maybe in here for now, I'm going to put, can't type, title, end, title, and then we're going to have some substance in there. So we're going to call this page like, hey mom, I don't know. I don't know why I said hey mom, but hey, it was entertaining than saying ASDF or something. All right, anyway, back on track. Body. So now we have the body of our document. We're going to end the body of our document. And trust me on this, I'm just going to use things. You can go look them up at W3 Schools. I'll try to explain a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to use a table tag, table element, but in the form of typing out these tags. Table, so end a table. So inside of here is the contents of my table in between these two opening and closing tags. So I like to indent just to see where, just to make sure that I'm keeping track of everything. So Chrome does something funny. I haven't, like I said, I'm not trying to pay attention to what all the browsers do to all this stuff. There's things like T-body. You could type them in there if you wanted to. When I learned HTML, I don't remember ever being told to use T-body. Um, I don't. I know it's not necessary. The browser will put this in there automatically, like for its own use, I guess, or to follow a standard or something. I don't know. Maybe I should be using them, but to me, it's just extra typing at this point. So I don't use them. They are there. You can use them. Um, just I don't know. I don't know what to say about that other than I don't know why. I don't know why they do it. I don't do it. So you might want to find out why or why not if it matters to you. It doesn't quite matter to me because it works. So I just use the table element or tag element. Inside of that table, there's what's called TR elements, which are essentially table rows, right? TR, I guess, makes sense. Um, and then, so inside of a table row, like one row across the width of a screen or something, I'm going to use a basic example of like a first name, last name table, right? So, but I want headings on my first row. So TH, table heading, I guess. And I'm saying I guess kind of facetiously because all of this stuff makes sense until we get to like the content. And I have no clue, but you'll see. Right? Just ignore me for now. You'll see why I'm facetiously talking like this. Table head, table header, or yeah, header. So let's call this first name. End the table header. And then we have another table header, and we're going to call this last name. Put a space in there. All right. And then we'll end that table header. Okay? Fair enough. Table row. In that. Come in here, indent, and we get this TD tag. I would expect this to be like TC or like table cell or something. I don't know. No, it's TD. I have no idea what TD stands for other than it's it's what I use to get my cells. It's not a header. It's not a header part of my column. It's the cell. It's the column entry. So it's the cell part. So TD. Let's go ahead and end that TD. TD end TD. We're going to have two of those, just like we have two tags up top for TH. And then I'm just going to put in my name. So I'm going to say Rick, and then Riggs. Okay. And there we go. So there's that row. I'm going to just copy this a few times. Maybe that was too much. Maybe it was. I don't want to run out of room here visually for us. Okay, so we have this. I'm going to make this one Joe Schmo. Whoops. No, we're going to put Schmo over here in the last name. Schmo. And I don't want to spend too much time over on the name side, so let's put in one more. I'll just say like Elvis Presley or something. I think that's spelled right. All right, not trying to offend, fans of the king. Anyway, let's move on. So let's save this. I'll refresh this in the browser. And there it is. There's the table. The table headers, they look different, so they're bold, right? They show up more like a header. And there we go. So first name, last name, first name, last name, first name, last name. And these are individual cells. This is one cell, this is another cell. This is a cell, this is a cell, this is a cell. Or at least they live in their own cells. Okay, so what do we do with that? So this is HTML. This is just HTML. I showed you HTML. Oh, look, the title. The title showed up here. So that's like, in my mind, the only visual element that really shows up in the head of a HTML document. There's other things like meta tags and other things you would put up in the head of your document. But there's also, if you're going to go learn like CSS from W3 schools, that will also live here in the head part of your document. Now, whether it lives typed out, like we're going to type it out directly here, or whether you link it in externally from a separate file, um, they show you how to do both. Don't freak out there. I'm just going to type it in here just so you kind of see everything together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say style. I'm going to open up a style container. I'm going to close the style container. And then I'm going to come up here, and this is kind of the first time we're going to be using this, but we're going to use it more and more, so might as well explain it here. So I'm going to put in an attribute. The attribute is called type, and for the type, it's text / CSS. Okay, so type. That's an attribute of the style tag or style container. Okay, now what? Now in there, we can do all sorts of, I guess, kind of cool things. So what we can do first off is just call out tag names inside of these, like inside of this style container. So style of table, anything that has a tag of table, what is in between these curly braces, the properties and values I set will be applied to anything that's a table inside of this body. It's anything in there. So, okay, fine. Let's say border. Uh, we're just going to say is one. I'm using a shorthand version of this. It's 1 pixel thick. It's solid, and it's black for the color. Okay, save it, refresh, and there we go. The table has a border all the way around it. Okay, perfect. Now I can also say that anything that's a TH or anything that's a TD also gets the same border around it. Refresh, and that looks good. Okay, so let's try something else. I'm going to just isolate the table only here. And I'm going to do something like border. I hope I'm doing this right. I might have to look it up, but border collapse is equal to collapse. I shouldn't say equal to, but on a technicality, it is equal. Okay, so I got rid of all that space between my cells. So this is starting to look a little bit more like Excel or something if you're used to that. Okay, it's a table. It's got rows, it's got columns, it's got individual cells where things live. Okay. All right. So that's CSS at its super basic right here. Us doing what we did here. I'm not going to go too much further into this other than show you how to use class identification and identification. Um, only because I need you to be able to kind of make sure that you go and look at that stuff at like a W3 schools or some other place so that you learn what they're doing. If you ever go and learn something like jQuery or something like that, they expand on those ideas. So I'm not really trying to teach you how to use that. I'm not trying to bring you way further than you're ready for, or am I trying to promote a library? It's just popular enough to where when you start looking some of the stuff up online, you're probably going to run across like, hey, why don't you use jQuery? It's so much easier and so much better. And um, learn the real stuff first is would be my suggestion. And once you learn and understand what it's doing, then go pick up a library to make what you're doing easier. Um, because I don't know, I hate removing from the core of things too quickly because then when something goes wrong over here in a library, you don't have your foundational information to understand like, oh, I shouldn't have done that because that just kind of breaks all the rules of just the way things work. So anyway, jQuery is kind of magic anyway. They do all sorts of stuff that shouldn't work, but it works magically. Um, so anyway, let's move on. All right, we're going to put in here, so I'm just going to show you how class works, at least with CSS. So I'm just going to put class here on, let's just say this first row, or the items within the first row. All right, so I'm just going to call these like label, right? This is the label of the table, right? These are the table labels or the column labels. So it's going to go into a label class. Now, if I want to do something different with the label class, I can call it out by class here. And in this case, it doesn't quite make sense um, because I could just call out th instead because that is where these label type things exist, and I can just set that. So it's not a great example, but we're going to do it anyway, unfortunately, because I don't have a better one right off the top of my head, just based on where we are in the function of things. And no, I don't want to call it class. I want to call it label. That is the class name. So dot indicates that I'm searching for a class in my body document, and anything with this class name label, do something with that, right? So I'm just going to set the color to be magenta, for instance. Save it, refresh it, and boom, anything with that label had magenta. Now, like I said, maybe I have more rows or columns or whatever. Maybe this one doesn't have that class name. So, in this case, just picking a th doesn't work, right? So, but the label class works because this is the only one with label, right? So save, refresh, and now you see that I can narrow down based on how I classify things, or that in our next version of how we get at stuff, how we identify things. So for identifiers, we would use this hashtag or sharp or I don't know pound octothorpe. I don't know, whatever you hashtag, right? We live in the age of Twitter. It's a hashtag. All right. Yeah, I think in all technicality, it's really is like an octothorpe or something named something weird like that. So let's see. I'm going to pick this one. I'm just going to say ID equals F1. So for like, how did I do that? F1. And then I'm just going to copy this around. And I'm going to paste that in here. And I'm just going to change the numbers here. So that goes to 2, and this goes to 3, right? So now I can get these individual things. And there's other things you can do. Yeah, I'm not going to go there. I mean, this is really the basics you need to know. Like, you could still get something done with this, just like this. And just because I tend not to use libraries like jQuery, even though I know they're super powerful and I know they're fun to use, and I don't know, but I like staying close to the language in this case because it keeps me like, hey, if I ended up on someone's computer and I couldn't remember where to go download jQuery's library, and I don't know, it's getting less and less of an excuse because the way you go and reference things is pretty popular. Um, but anyway, I could still use the language like no internet on my local computer. I can fire up a text editor and I can do this. And so I'll teach it that way. So pound, let's say I'm going to change my first name. I'm going to say pound F1. Okay, pound F1 is what? Maybe I just want my name to stand out or something. I don't know. Maybe I just want to change the background color of mine, where my name's at or something. So let's do that. Background dash color is silver, and then maybe the color. I don't know. I'm just reaching for things here. Orange. Okay. Save. Refresh. That's way too hard to see. Anyway, sorry about that. Let's just call this like dark gray. See if that changes anything. Refresh. Hey, it got a little easier to see, maybe. Um, is there such thing as a dark orange? Yeah, whatever. It didn't really change. So, I don't know. Let's call this pink or something, just to make it stand out. Something visible. There we go, stood out. You can see it. All right, so anyway, so I could do that. So I showed you just the basics of CSS at this point of how you declare it in a browser. Um, it kind of works on its own in the sense that, I don't need JavaScript for this. I use JavaScript for this personally. I tend not to use too much of this myself. I used to use it a lot because I didn't understand how JavaScript manipulated this stuff. So I kind of stuck with this style of things for a very long time. But okay, so I'll kind of just get off of that train right now. I'm going to go ahead and put these IDs over here now. Control C. We're going to, I should copy the space if I'm smart. That way I don't have to type it myself. And then I'll just paste, paste, paste. And then we're just going to call this L. And we're going to call that L2 and then L3. Okay, so now we got that. All right, so now I'm just going to leave us some space here. It doesn't quite matter. It's just for cleanliness, I guess, while we're going through this. So I'm going to make a script tag, and this is where we're going to start to introduce JavaScript. I'm not going to do it here quite yet. I'm just leaving space for it. We're going to jump over on the browser and start using it. All right, so I'm going to save this right now. This is Chrome. I'm using Chrome. It's free to download. Go ahead and download it if you want to follow along with me. So once you have it and it's up and you're running kind of this and you've kind of copied what we're doing, if you wanted to follow through with that, in the browser, on a page, on any page, you can hit Control Shift J, and this developer tools section will pop up. If you forget what I told you on tool or on how to get those tools, you can hit Control Shift I guess. Okay, same thing. So here, let me try it. Control Shift I. Yeah, I guess same thing. I do J. I learned it that way. Anyway, so let's see what we can see. So I got this elements, and this is that that table, and then we see this T body that they inserted. I kind of warned you about it, but we didn't do it there. They automatically applied it for us. So great, typing we didn't have to do. All right, and now we have our 4 rows of information, and if you notice up here, the information highlights as we go through that. And just because we're not getting complicated in terms of the size of this document, I'm going to increase it so we can see it. All right, there we go. So I scroll through those. So we know that the browser is like completely aware of like how to reference this as an object, that as an object, that as an object, that as an object. This, by and large, is object-oriented programming. It's just we're not exposed fully to how Chrome is dealing with it, but we know it's an object because this relates to this up here, and they know that. But they're giving us the ability to hover over that and say, hey, what is that? Okay, what's inside of that? Oh, you got this and you got this. So we can keep going. Like I can completely change this right now. I can say uh, blah, right? And that says blah now. I mean, I can refresh. Didn't save anything because it's just processing what we saved on file here. It's not saving anything back. But we can completely manipulate stuff in the browser and see what happens because these are objects we can reference. So we have this cool little console over here, and it's a JavaScript console. We can type in JavaScript directly here. It doesn't have to be read up necessarily to see what we're doing. And in this way, it's kind of cool because we could define it, use it. We made a mistake. Who cares? Refresh the page, and we're kind of back at square one again. So that's kind of cool. All right. So let's see what happens with style as it relates to JavaScript. Um, and and once we're done with this, we'll go ahead. I mean, we'll start up the next video, right? Be looking for that one. We'll go to the next video about how to use this in an OOP fashion once we explain what exactly object-oriented programming is, at least in how I practically use it. There's big debates, and I'm not trying to get into those big time, but I'm trying to get into the practical side of this. So let's use these objects that Chrome has exposed to us, or that HTML exposes to JavaScript, I should say, because any browser is going to process these things basically in this way. So we can take advantage of what we see here and we can apply it to what we do when we actually start scripting over here. So I don't know, what am I going to do? I'm going to say, I'm going to get my name. So I'm going to say my F name, my first name, equals document dot get element by ID. That's why I use the ID tags, because JavaScript knows how to get at those. Okay. And the ID for my first name is F1. And then just end it with a semicolon. On a technicality, I think JavaScript has gone to like an ES6 sort of thing, which I think Chrome kind of recognizes. You don't technically have to use that semicolon. So I can hit enter and it's good. I use it because I'm probably too old school for my own good. So I use it. I don't have to though. I can get rid of it. It's just there. It's ghosted because they try to say, hey, did you mean what you typed in last? No, but it's not there, and you see it, but it's still evaluated and it's proper. So now I have this my F name, right? My F name, and I can set attributes. Right? Remember, these are attributes. The ID things are attributes. So attributes are real easy to see because they have this uh, label, so to speak, like what is it? And they have this equal sign, and then they have some sort of value that gets set on the other side. So they're real easy to catch. Even Notepad++ says, hey, I recognize that because of its structure. It's something with an equal sign and some value, and they turn it red for me, which is cool. So it sees that, hey, there's an attribute there on this th tag. There's an attribute here on this td tag. And what I can do with that now is I can say dot set attribute, and I can do a style. So this is one of those other things you will see if you hop into W3 schools. You will see that you can actually write your style in line with an actual element. I don't know if yeah, you know what? I'm going to skip on this. I'm going to just refresh this. So all my stuff goes away, right? All my stuff goes away. All right, and then I'm going to pick this one, for instance. I'm going to put style, because this is another way to use CSS. And I can just put color of Joe's text there is going to be, I don't know, let's pick a cool color. Joe, you're going to be green, man. All right, so there we go. So I can do that, just like that. And when I refresh, he's green. Kind of hard to see, but he's green. It's not a very bright green. Let's do a bright green. So I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to do 0, 0, and then I'm going to do FF, and then I'm going to do 0, 0. And then, so he's going to be all green, nothing but green for Joe. There's super bright Joe green. Okay, there we go. Good job, Joe. All right, he's green. Okay, now what? Well, we saw now that there's a style prop or attribute, right, inside of this TD tag. This container has this attribute of style, and it's there. This one doesn't. But on the back end, it does because there's something referencing it by ID. So let's take a look at that because I want you to see it. So we refresh, everything's kind of red up. Joe's super green, and I'm pink and silver, but I didn't say that in here anywhere. So let's see what that looks like. I'm just going to put F1. F1 equals document dot get element by ID, and I'm going to put F1 as the ID because that's what it is. All right, F1. There I am. So if I say F1 dot style, so what happens is because the browser is dealing with style on the back end, it has information for this stuff. But what it's disconnected from is disconnected from a tag that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, so it can't connect it there. Where if I look at F2, right? If I were to create an F2.style, let's say I change, the green to a blue, okay? F.color equals blue. Hit enter. Sorry, that needs to be in quotation marks for JavaScript. All right, so Joe turned blue, but check this out. So remember f1.style, right? Really pink, right? So let's say f1. Let's say I want me to be f1 dot style dot color equals red instead of pink. I just want to be like full on red over there. There, and it's red, but check this out. When I go and look at the elements, I'm going to pull this up a little bit so we can see it. So that the first row we're not interested in. That's the column headings. But this one I'm interested in. Color red. So see, I didn't have a style tag, but it added one because I went through JavaScript and it wants to give a property to this. So it went ahead and added that, which great, perfect. So when we specifically add it, we have access to it. But as soon as we set something with it, we gain access to it because the browser adds it to the tag. But there's another way to just ensure that it's there. And I want you to know this because I've had problems with this in the past. Like you're trying to set a style on something, but it didn't form this connection for you like it did here. Um, I don't know if that problem is just going away with the maturity of browsers as they're releasing stuff. I kind of hope it is because it was a common problem, just one of those things starting out. So anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on all these little nuances of things, but let's move it along. So now that style is there, though, I can directly say f1.style.color, and it worked this in this round. Like it worked for me, no big deal. Um, that didn't always work. So you still might have problems in other browsers, and the way to kind of get around that from my perspective was here. I'm just going to refresh this. That way, that style tag here doesn't exist. There we go. It's gone. So the proper way to add that, even though they're kind of doing it for us, is to say, let's do our F1 element again. I'm just hitting the up arrow. It remembered what I typed, so I'm gonna hit enter. Okay, and then F1 dot set attribute of style equal to nothing. Like that was the easiest way to get this stuff connected. So set attribute of style, don't give it any information, hit go. Notice the label, like notice up here when I hit enter. Undefined, F1, undefined. Oh, I'm in the wrong row, sorry. Boom, style, it's empty. Let's do that again, refresh. I don't know why it popped up that one instead on refresh. Okay, so there is no style tag. I'm going to get the element. I'm going to set the style to nothing, and then boom, it's there. It's connected, but there's no style information connected to that tag yet. So what's weird is, right, there's this pink text and this gray silver background, but style says nothing about it, right? So this is why I don't really care to use this stuff because it doesn't necessarily mean a connection. I prefer to deal with it all in JavaScript because if ever I want to go and change it or first know what it is before I change it, I would rather just deal with it in JavaScript and I'm done. So that's kind of the point. I go through all this to show you, yes, CSS works all on its own. You can leave JavaScript completely out of the picture. But when JavaScript shows up, there's some funny things that kind of happen here. But when I change them, they start to populate here, right? So f1 dot style, right, dot color equals f1 dot style dot color. Let's see what happens. Well, that's still empty. Okay, so even if I go f1 dot color, that doesn't exist. So where is this being stored? I don't really know. Like I don't know how to get at that properly. Maybe it's in some sort of computed thing of the window. I don't know. Maybe I'm just completely unaware of how to get at that properly. But I don't want to struggle there anyway, so I just deal with it all in JavaScript, and it's easy, and I get to work with it that way. So I just say f1 dot style. Sorry, style. Not C style. Come on, man. Dot color equals red, and boom, it's there, and it's also here. And I can go now and read that style property. So I can say what is, right? I'll just alert this. Uh, alert what? F1 dot style dot color, and it says, hey, you're red. So that's a property at any point in time in code. I can go and say, hey, what is that? What's the value of this property or that property or some other property? What is the contents of that? What is this or that? And I just wanted you to be aware that this is exactly why I will deal with this in script, even though when you start to learn it, you're going to start to learn it like this, or calling this in from some external file, which I didn't do in this case. Okay, that being said, let's see, I think we're done here. I think we're done on this video, so I'll go ahead and let you go. I know it was a little bit long, but it was critical for me to explain the overview of how HTML works and how CSS works within it, and then how JavaScript kind of jumps in to the picture. I know we didn't go super far in terms of JavaScript. I did say we were going to finish up here just because, I did say that, so let's do it. I'm just going to change Elvis Presley or something. So I'm going to say F3 equals document. I can't even type. Dot get element by ID, and we're going to say F3. That's F3. Control C, V, boom. All right, and this is L3, and this is L3. All right, and then what are we going to do with that? We're going to say L3, or sorry, F3 dot set attribute of style. And what we could do this here. I don't like to, but it puts it, at least if you want to gain some sense of like, hey, I learned it in this syntax format, like border dash collapse or background dash color, right? I learned it that way. So you could use it this way. I don't particularly care for it, but I'll show you both. So we'll just say background color is blue, right? This is like his blue suede shoe ground or something, okay? And then L3 dot set attribute of style to nothing, but we do have to type another line, which is the other part of this. So L3 dot style dot background color. Notice the difference? No hyphen, but a capital letter instead, or camel cased as a lot of us refer to it. Background color equals, and then I'll just put, I don't know, what should we do here? What should we, purple, right? Something like that. I don't know. All right, save that, refresh that. Blue, purple. Okay. Equivalent. You can still use your CSS syntax if you wanted to, but you can't just come back here and set something else, and that's kind of the other problem. So F3 dot, you can't do it the same way without overwriting what you've done before, because it completely overwrites what's in that tag. So style, right? So I'm just kind of showing you the drawback of this and why, again, why I don't use it this way. So I'm going to say color is equal to red on Elvis, right? So we're going to save that, refresh, but notice that the background color won't be blue because it completely overwrote this tag, right? The style tag like this starts to get populated when we do this, but when we do that again, it completely hijacks that tag and sets it to this. But when we do it like this, it hijacks the tag, but only to the point where it assembles these different properties and it concatenates them together and they all live kind of in harmony. So let's show that how we can get that to work. This one just won't even be anything, but I'm going to copy it. Actually, that's not what I don't want to set the attribute again. I just want to say style dot background color is is equal to blue. All right, save. And there we go. They coexist now. So now I have red flower, blue thorns. You Shrek fans might be laughing at me right now, but if you didn't get it, it's a Shrek reference. Sorry. Okay, that concludes this video. Thanks, guys.